So we will be talking about the requirements that we have formulated to start working on our Navigate Recovery project. So we're the Crusaders, and we're going to get into it. So first, before we start, I want to get into the agenda. So in the agenda, first we're going to go through the documentation lead concepts, and that's going to be on slides 3 through 5. Then we're going to switch to the team manager on slides 6 through 8, the data modeler on slide 9, our code architecture will be on slides 10 through 11, and that will include a demo. And then our testing lead will also talk on slide 12. Then we're going to go to our UI and UX designers, talking on slide 13 through 14, which will also have a demo. And then we're going to conclude. So going into the next slide, first I'm going to introduce our clients. So the clients that we're working with work for Navigate Recovery. So we're working with Amanda Stripmatter and Blake Clark. So Amanda, she's a program manager for the Safe Harbor Addiction Center, and she spends a lot of her time at the women's part of Navigate Recovery. So she works with women who are overcoming addiction, and she herself, as with all of the different peers, that's what they call them at Navigate Recovery, all of the workers, they call them peers because they also themselves are, addiction recovery as well. They're also recovering from that. So it's really cool how they are able to help others while they're also themselves going through the process, and they know, firsthand how it feels like to be someone who's struggling with that. So I really found that really cool when we were starting to work with them. And then Blake, he's the program manager for the Lifeline ED, and we've been working with him really closely too. And we're super excited to have them. They're both great. So now let's introduce ourselves. So I'm Ruby Hernandez. I'm going to be the client liaison for the group and the documentation lead. And then Johnny Tran, he is our team manager and our data modeler. Marco Carrillo is our code architecture or lead programmer and the testing lead. And then John Brandt is the UI and UX designer. So we make up the Crusaders. And as for the documentation lead, so that's me. First, we're going to be really talking about how we're going to be doing all of our documentation and making sure that everyone has all of the up-to-date information on what files are currently in place. So first, for our backlog and all of our user stories, we're going to be using Jira. So that's a developer tool that helps manage agile software development projects. So we're going to be using that. And then for all of our version control for our actual files and code, we're going to be using GitHub. And so we have a repository clone in our computers, and we're going to be using that. And then as for any documentation help screen, we have our README file, which has a description of what we're doing, all of our team members, and some links to the different communication channels that we will be using. And then those communication channels will be Discord, Microsoft Teams, and Microsoft Outlook. So we'll be communicating throughout those channels evenly as the time is appropriate. And so that is what we will be doing for this project. And then I'll be passing it on to Johnny so he can get into the team manager aspect.
Hi, so I'm Johnny. I'm the team manager for the Crusaders, and I'm going to provide a bit of information about Navigate Recovery. So Navigate Recovery is a nonprofit organization that specializes in addiction treatment. They help facilitate between individuals in need of help, who they call peers, and connect them to the appropriate resources that provide care and treatment for their recovery. The peers are helped out by the Navigate Recovery staff, who are called coaches, who, as Ruby said, were also former victims of addiction that are currently in long-term recovery themselves. The coaches help provide guidance and a connection to the peers who may have suffered through the same experiences as them. They're able to provide help for several issues such as drugs, alcohol, sex trafficking survivors, and homelessness, and they help the peers make educated decisions on what resources that they feel is best able to help them, based on factors such as health insurance and what type of treatment, such as outpatient or inpatient programs. Our clients, Amanda and Blake, have requested help to make a website for coaches to be able to easily sort through information on partners and resources. They want to be able to easily pull up and update the information on the website as it changes in order to provide accurate and relevant information to be able to help their peers. Our team, the Crusaders, have several members that enjoy helping nonprofit organizations, so we felt like this organization's goal aligned with ours. And while we are not fully familiar with all of the technologies that we're using in this project, most of our members have at least some sort of exposure to web development and will be familiar with some of the formats and terminologies that are going to be used in this project. We're also very familiar with Java and relational databases as they'll be used, and we have experience building a software project as a team. Next slide, please. For our requirements this time around, since the previous group that worked with Navigate Recovery were able to get much of the groundwork done in regards to the framework of the website, after we showed our clients a demo of what the previous team had accomplished, we were able to get these new sets of requirements from them that involved reformatting what was previously a client page into what we call a partners page, which are organizations that will help fund and help the Navigate Recovery. As such, most of our functional requirements are related to this task and being able to view, create, and edit information related to partners. We split the requirements into users and super users. Users will be able to just view the information, and super users who will be able to edit and create and delete the information. We were also given a set of non-functional requirements from a meeting with the previous team, where they said it would be nice to improve page loading times with the pagination, if it was possible to do so. We also had our own personal non-functional requirement to improve the UI to a user-friendly one. Next slide, please. So our plan for this semester is to use the first sprint to familiarize ourselves with the technologies used by the previous team to be able to start to understand and improve upon their work. Afterwards, we plan on transferring the data from the previous team's database to be able to use on our own domain. This will require a minor update related to the Hasura database itself, which was what the previous team used to be able to properly port it to our own domain. And if we had extra time afterwards, we plan on to at least get started on creating the framework of the partners page without functionality. And for our next 2 sprints, we plan on splitting the requirements and functionalities of the partners page into 2 separate sprints. And if we have time allows us to do so, to also improve the UI to be more user-friendly. We plan on updating our clients regularly throughout the weekly meetings to show them our progress and hopefully being able to finish and show it to them by the time the functional requirements are completed. Next slide, please. As I'm also the data modeler for the group, I'll also be going over through a few things that are related to the database. So this is a class diagram that was created by the previous team that worked on this project that basically outlines the database and all the fields that were used in the database. As you can see, they were using a relational database, Postgres SQL, as they use IDs to identify each individual entry in the table. They had several tables that stored separate information related to Navigate Recovery, such as programs, substances, and coaches. The peer pages isn't really relevant anymore because we were planning to convert that into the partners page due to HIPAA guidelines restricting the access of personal patient information. For the database, they use Hasura, which is connected to Postgres SQL. I believe the previous group used it because of the ease of connection with our deployment method, which is Heroku. It was very easy to set up, such as one click just to easily connect the information, and it was able to be edited directly on Heroku. And the database is going to be accessed using scripts through JavaScript that will update the information as will be edited on the website. And the data will be stored as JSONs, which will allow easy transmission of user inputted data to machine readable data. The database on the screen should already have the information inputted by the previous group. And as I said, it would need a minor upgrade to update to be able to properly port over to our own Heroku domain. And now I'll pass it over to Marco, who will go over code architecture.
All right, so these are the technologies that we are going to use for the project. Pretty much all of these were already brought up by the previous group, and so we're pretty much taking over. So for the front end, we're going to be using Next.js. Next.js is pretty much an open source development framework that's built on top of Node.js, and it's pretty much what's called enables several features, including server-side rendering and generating static websites. And we're also going to be using backend with Express.js, which pretty much works with Node.js. And for the database, we're going to be using Postgres SQL, which is pretty much integrated with Hasura. And Hasura also has the GraphQL, which is pretty much designed to make APIs fast, flexible, and developer friendly. And for the authentication, we're going to be using Firebase. Pretty much authenticates the users. So pretty much when the user or the coaches for this project, when they log in, they're going to log in pretty much in Next.js, and they're going to be authenticated by Firebase. And the coaches or Blake wanted us to implement, or wanted the previous group to implement, where they were able to add resources into the database, which is why they implemented Hashura, which is with PostgreSQL, the SQL. So pretty much the coaches were able to add resources into the program by the website, and it was pretty much, it went into the database. So next slide. So pretty much this is the folder, the page folder. Pretty much the previous group pretty much already created a lot of the work that was needed to implement the website. So the main page, or is the pages. So it has the admin folder, the authentication folder, the peer folder, and the resource folder. So pretty much all of these pages is for one web page in the website. And sorry, and what's called, there's also the components, which pretty much is all the functions that the previous group made to allow the website to function. So that's pretty much the folder structure for the React for this project. So the next slide. So for testing, the previous group used Jest and Mocha. For our group, we're going to begin with Jest, and we're going to see how it works. And since the previous group also used Mocha, we're not sure which one to use at first, but we're going to use Jest to begin with. And pretty much with Jest, we're going to be testing out the features to see if they function correctly. We're also going to be testing if the functions output the correct information, as well as user input. If the user input is valid or invalid, we're going to be testing all that. And for the okay, so the acceptance testing cases, an example or two examples was going to be the create partner and edit partner information user stories. So for those, we would be testing to check if the name is valid or invalid, to make sure that no invalid name is allowed into the database, as well as emails and phone numbers. We're going to be testing if they're invalid or valid. So no what's called incorrect information is passed into the database. Since the website allows the coaches to input their own information, a lot of that has to be tested to make sure that there is no incorrect information that's passed to the database. And next, and then I think I'm gonna be passing it to John.
Yes, I'm John. I'm in charge of the UI and UX design, which the previous team designed the page already, so most of that is done. I'll go ahead and be walking us through. So this is the page here, navigate recovery. We just sign in. So once you sign in, it activates this little admin option here, and you're redirected to the main page. So right now we have peers, which will actually be changed to partners. We will be using, I know we're using pagination on the resources page to speed up load times and lower the clutter. We may be doing the same thing on the partner side, depending on how that works out. But the partners will be, these are essentially people or organizations that Navigate Recovery works with to host events and whatnot. And the resources are actually, which we'll go there now. They're actually organizations that help. These can be hospitals, these can be halfway houses, rehab facilities, etc. So as you can see right now, there are a lot of filters here. We will be removing some of those to declutter and possibly adding an advanced filter option. And we will be using pagination so that we don't have all of these loading at once, which should speed up load times. Now under the admin here, we have add users, remove users, which these all take you to their own little pages. And as you can see, there's a little bit of load time issues here. We also have add resources, add resource skeleton, and view resource usage, which actually lets you see, well, I don't know if this is actively functioning, but this allows you to see how often these resources have been used. And next slide, yes. Okay, so here you can see, this will just give a little bit more information on what we're adding. You can see we have the login page. Obviously, it goes through the authentication. If it fails, password or username fails, reroutes to the login page. Once you log in, you go to the main page, as mentioned, and then you have all these functions here. Now, what we are adding is once we have changed the peers to partners, we are going to have the edit partners under that tab. And same goes for resources. They didn't have an edit resources option before, but we will be adding that to the resources page. And then under admin, we will be having add users, remove users, add partners, remove partners, add resources, and edit resource skeleton, as well as the view resource usage. Off to you, Ruby.
Thank you. So yeah, that's the end of our presentation, and thank you so much for listening to us. Hopefully you learned something about what we're going to be doing this semester. So that is it. Thank you.